Hey guys, welcome back out to the channel. You know, it's always so difficult to figure out what's going on with our food supply chain. And in 2020, I noticed that most of our chicken was being sold without the skin on. Okay, so the first thing I thought was, okay, there's industry helping to make sure that I eat healthier. And then I had to think about it because in the US, the food industry is dominated by large corporations. And I don't know about you, but I haven't found my health to be a big driver in their decision making. I mean, when you look at the significant damage that GMO crops have done in the environment and just how indifferent these companies are to making a change, I think I really had to rethink my assumptions that companies were removing the skin on chicken for my health. I've been researching what's been going on in our food supply chain for about 3 years now. And what really stepped up my need to understand what was going on with our food was my own health. And if you're here on my YouTube channel, you've been walking through my whole personal life change that I've been traveling after going through life. And, you know, sometimes you wake up and realize you're really sick or really unhealthy. And how did you get here? So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you can always change it. Well, this year is about weight for me. And you're going to see a lot of episodes that address different aspects of weight. And in all of that, you're going to find Chinese medical theory that will help you understand why I was even thinking about that in the first place. Okay, well, why was I even thinking about chicken? So usually when you're dealing with weight in Chinese medicine, you're dealing with a spleen or stomach deficiency. Makes sense, huh? And in Chinese medicine, you're going to hear things like your channel is weak or deficient. So your Chinese medical provider is going to say things like, oh, you have a spleen deficiency. And you're probably wondering, what are some of the common signs of spleen deficiency? Well, gaining weight is one of them, but what about fatigue? You know, when you're tired all the time? And what about diarrhea or poor appetite? Another one is obsessive thinking. You know, those random thoughts that just pop into your head and take over your mind? And that usually happens at night when you're trying to fall asleep. Besides obesity, there are a lot of common health issues which have spleen deficiency wrapped in it, like diabetes. Miscarriages are usually about spleen deficiency. Anxiety usually has a huge component of spleen deficiency wrapped in it. And this year is about weight for me, where gaining and retaining weight has a big piece of spleen deficiency in it. So I want to strengthen my spleen. Now you've seen my episode, What is Chinese Nutritional Therapy? A Beginner's Guide? I talked about chicken and how it's considered a bland food in Chinese medicine. Okay, so in Chinese Nutritional Therapy, there's different flavor categories for food like sweet, bland, sour, bitter, pungent, and salty. I've been focusing on bland foods, and guess why? Because foods with a bland flavor help move phlegm out of the body. And what type of weight do I have going on? You guessed it, that impossible to lose weight I highlighted in my episode, Lose the Impossible Weight in 5 Minutes a Day, Breaking Up Phlegm. I don't have your normal weight that reducing calories will take off. My weight is more about inflammation, and calorie reduction doesn't work on that. So not only does chicken help with phlegm in the body, it also helps rebuild the spleen. That's the neat thing about Chinese medicine. The more you know about it, the more you can pick one thing that will have multiple positive impacts on multiple areas of your health. Okay, that's why I was looking at chicken. Sounds good, huh? Yet, here's the thing. I love the skin on chicken. Have you ever slow roasted your chicken in the oven so the skin is nice and crispy? That's my favorite. So I was a little miffed when it was difficult to find chicken with skin on it, and I was wondering why this was happening. So I went and researched it. Back in 2019, the National Chicken Council asked the USDA to change the food safety and inspection standards for chickens with avian leukosis. They wanted to be able to trim off the tumors and sell the meat to you and me. And in July of 2020, during the pandemic, the change was approved, and one of the stated purposes was to avoid potential meat shortages during the pandemic. Okay, so what is avian leukosis? It's leukemia, and leukemia is a cancer where the body produces too many white blood cells, and these white blood cells are usually being overproduced in specific areas of the body. If the additional white blood cells are produced in the bone marrow, it would be myelogenous leukemia. And if the white blood cells were being overproduced in the lymph tissue, it would be lymphoid leukemia. So the tissue producing the white blood cell identifies the type of leukemia. And what that means is avian leukosis isn't just one disease. It's going to be this umbrella term where all the different types of bird white blood cell cancers are captured. And you can keep these leukemias out of your chicken flocks by following strict sanitation measures. And there might be issues with that because you've seen how overcrowded some of the factory farming for meat poultry is. So what does all this have to do with me purchasing chicken with the skin on? Well, the most common areas that the tumors show up is going to be the skin and the giblets. And according to the new rules, as long as you remove the tumors, you can continue processing the chicken and sell it for human consumption. So as long as you remove the skin, you can continue to process the chicken and sell it for human consumption. Now, I grew up in rural America in a small farming community. One of the key tenets was you don't eat meat from sick animals. You know, we have chronic wasting disease in deer and elk here in the States. It wasn't until recently that the CDC suggested that hunters might not want to eat meat from any animal appearing sick. Well, I have friends who are hunters. They were taking deer and elk with chronic wasting disease. And for me, all I could think was, don't you remember the 80s and mad cow disease in Britain? The first case of sick cattle was in 1986, and it wasn't 10 years later, in 1995, that a 19-year-old, Stephen Churchill, he became sick with this new type of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease that was tied back to eating beef infected with mad cow disease. He did die of that. And the following year, another 20-year-old, Peter Hall, he was a vegan. He died of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. The medical community determined that he got that from eating burgers as a child. So for me, I was like, wow, this disease also had this really long incubation period. And Britain did find the cause of mad cow disease in cattle and eliminated that. But here's the thing. What I learned from that was you don't eat sick animals. Food choices are a critical driver of your health. And I learned this way back in the 70s when my mother had stage 3 breast cancer. Mishu Kushi was able to show my mother how to eat foods that would rebuild her health. And through the intervention of foods, she was able to take her stage 3 breast cancer into complete remission. It was a crazy lesson for me. And Mishu Kushi's information just seemed like magic. So there's one more thing I learned growing up in the farming belt. Healthy fat is white. So when you're buying any meat, look for the whitest fat you can find. That brings me full circle to why I buy my chicken with the skin on. And if there are leaving the skin on during processing, there's a higher probability that this chicken did not show an active infection of avian leukosis during processing. And what that might mean is the farm this chicken came from is doing a better job of managing its sanitation. So that's the first two reasons why I buy my chicken with the skin on.
And to get more information on sanitation in the U.S. food supply chain, check out the episode Food Labeling Part 1, how to figure out if your foods are radiated or if it's GMO. The third reason that I buy chicken with skin on is because I can see the fatty tissue. And you want that to be white. And the last thing with chicken, you really want the meat to look white instead of having that yellow tinge to it. And only organic or naturally raised chicken has that white meat in the markets where I shop. It's really surprising when you look at factory farm chicken next to natural or organic chicken in the same grocery store. You can't miss the difference.
Okay, there it is. Hopefully you heard something here that changed your mind so you can change your life. And until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.